Hello everyone, this is Caillou, back again with Pipsqueak and Dodger, and after a long wait after the Alcaba review, we're here to review the other set that got in that rotation, Beyond Our Ken by Hersey Quersey. So, this set, flavorfully, is about a world with a lot of shamans, a lot of essentially worship of eldritch beings, or I guess not worship of eldritch beings. Man, I'm already messing this up. But essentially, there's this concept that there are overseers who created the world, and they meddle with or interfere with the lives of their people. And the tension of the set is sort of between the humans who are these creatures' creations and these unknowable horrors, hence the name of the set, Beyond Our Ken. Mechanically, it brings back some old favorites from MSEM like Revive and Coalesce, while introducing mechanics of its own like Acquiesce and the other one whose name I cannot remember. Um, Overall, though, Beyond Our Ken has
Just all.
Gestalt, that's the one, the
Yeah.
mutate alike. Overall, though, Beyond Our Ken has a pretty high power level, but it's interesting to see uh, where that power level is relevant in MSEM because some of it is just overlapping with or overlapping but slightly worse than existing options, um, while others are wildly new areas that MSEM has not covered before. So it's going to be interesting to talk through the cards here. Do you guys have any other, I guess, like face check impressions before we head on into the card by card?
Yeah, for anyone who liked the movie or book Annihilation, this is effectively an Annihilation fan set, but like subtly.
An Annihilation, but make it fantasy instead of sci-fi.
hmm
Uh,
And in
yeah. The
fact,
one thing, the one thing I'll say is that this set isn't super obvious about it, but it's pretty much a shard set.
yeah,
So it has like very distinct three color archetypes that each have their own mechanic. And the limited doesn't necessarily try super hard to get you to play three colors every game. Like there's room to play two colors, but there's also room to play three colors. So it's a little bit different from like your kind of traditional Alara style um, shard format in that sense. But otherwise, yeah,
That
it's
also
something that we've
reminded
seen
me of
before.
the fifth mechanic, which is the returning cannon mechanic Poison, but instead
Yeah,
of infect or as an aggressive mechanic, it's used as a punisher to enable a more controlling strategy.
yeah, and I guess I can just talk about which mechanics are in which shard. So Esper is the poison shard, um, as Kaya just described. Um, Grixis is the
Acquiesce.
acquiesce shard, and acquiesce is a mechanic. It's like a rebound like that goes on instants and sorceries. But the second cast happens when one of your creatures deals combat damage to a player. Um, Jund is using the revive mechanic, which is basically a bomb. Um, the Naya shard is focused on Gestalt, which is like mutate, but weird. I think we'll talk about Gestalt when we actually get to a Gestalt card because it's kind of hard for me to explain exactly what it does now. And then the Bant shard is focused on Coalesce, which is like flashback but with creatures attached, basically.
Mm-hmm. So the
And without further
format,
ado, I
yeah.
think, yeah.
I was just gonna say the format's limited is very powerful, but also on like very differing axes. So because
Mhm.
you have the Band Coalesce and Esper Poison, which if you let them get into the late game, they will like, and by late game we're talking like turn 6, 7. They can start overwhelming you. Then there's Gestalt and Acquiesce, which are incredibly aggressive and can run you down in the first 3 turns if you're not prepared. And then you have Revive, which sort of like straddles the two and can duke it out in the late game if necessary, but mostly wants to put pressure and put creatures on the board early, and then to force you to make awful trades into them.
Mhm.
So yeah, we're not going to be talking much of the limited because this is MSCM set review, so we're going to be talking about it from a constructor perspective. But the limited is insane, and if you love high power limiteds, you should check out Beyond Arcane. But yeah, okay, actually now let's get into our first card of the day, which is going to be Fade, the card formerly known as Fade from Memory. Um, it's 1 white instant, and it's essentially a quench with upside. You exile the spell it's countered, um, and it's in white, which is interesting given we've had attempts at mono white tempo that even top aided a GP at one point. So the idea of counter magic in mono white is not like
Okay,
foreign
that
to
deck was
MSEM.
terrible though. That deck was hard carried by Helvala.
Pretty.
But I digress.
Helvala. Okay. The
Yeah.
the
That card doesn't exist anymore. But
yeah.
I think it's really funny that we're starting on this card because it's essentially a color pie debate and not really a talk about the actual card. I think mostly just because there's been a lot of discussion where people are like, white should get counterspells, and then whenever people print white counterspells, people are like, this is too good for white, and it's like, well, which is it, you know?
I mean, to be fair, those are different people, right? Like the people.
Not even always. I feel like I see the same people sometimes.
Yeah,
well,
I think
those people are trolling.
I think it comes down to expectations around what will be relevant where.
Yeah.
And I think we can safely say that MSEM in blue has counterspell options that outstrip Fade pretty handily.
Yeah.
By a large margin.
Yeah.
There's no way you're playing this unless you're not blue.
Mm-hmm.
But I will say that, like, the Quench is actually almost good enough in terms of MSEM. Like, you want a little bit extra. Like, you want your Quench to also be a Force Spike, or you want your Quench to create
1/1 tokens, for example.
Yeah, like
just off the top of my head.
There's a couple different upsides you get on Quench in MSEM, but Exile is also not a negligible upside. Like, there are matchups where this exiling the thing it counters can potentially swing that matchup a noticeable amount, like versus Infuse the Apparatus comes to mind.
Or if there are very strong revelations being played on curve.
Yep. Yeah, like if you tag someone's RFE with this, that actually feels good, and countering an RFE basically never gets to feel good. So yeah, I think this card is fairly playable in White X decks that want to play counter magic. The main issue is if you're not, you also need to not be in blue, and if you're not in blue, you're usually going to be a tap out deck of some kind. In which case, holding up 2 mana gets a lot more awkward. Like, I think this card kind of would probably not be that good in Mardu style decks, but I can see an argument for it. Is basically where it comes down to. It's like if you can pretty easily convince me I need this card to shore up my X matchup, and I'll believe it.
And if we get enough density, there is the potential for like white something else. But I think the main thing comes down to the question is, why aren't you playing blues? There has to be some sort of, and I think it's not going to be in the answer suite. So there has to be some win con that is in white, but for some reason isn't in blue. So it would probably have to be in 2 other colors. That is drawing you out there. And even then, with how good the format's mana is, there has to also be some question as to why are you not splashing this. But I could still see it happening, even though I definitely made the situation sound a lot more unlikely. So
yeah. Should we move on to the next card?
Yes. So the next card is Fleshscale Serpent, 1 in white. 2, 3. Whenever an opponent draws a card except for the first one they draw on each of their draw steps, they may pay 1. If they don't, that player gets a poison counter and you draw a card. So this does stupid things with wheels, shockingly. The fact it can sometimes kill your opponent if they draw enough cards is actually really nice, because sometimes you hit the point of no return with combo decks where it's like, well, whatever, I'm going to draw 12 cards. I don't care if you draw 12 cards. I'm just going to kill you. This card's actually like secretly pretty good hate versus Infuse the Apparatus. I'm very glad I haven't seen anyone with it this GP. Which might change with this next round, actually.
Noticeably, I think... Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
Well, I just think we're probably... Depending on what direction WotC goes with symmetric card draw in white, like if they ever print anything that's actually good and not Secret Rendezvous, we might start seeing more of that in the custom space. We've already seen a card called Trade Route Bandit, I think, from Riddles of Revio. That's not terrible. It's like a 2-mana 2/1 with flash that makes each player draw 2. Like that. Yep. So if you get good symmetric draws with this, you can actually just like start turning those into extra draws, or like taxing your opponent. Either way is like pretty solid. I don't know. I mean, I don't think this card is like by itself going to justify that strategy, but it's not a horrible stat line or a hate bear in its own right. So,
Yeah.
it's worth considering.
The one other thing I will note is I think this fares into control much worse than, its canon cousins like Notion Thief or Narset or so on. Giving them the ability to pay to prevent the draw is actually pretty bad versus control, because control decks are the types of deck that have mana left over. And the fact this doesn't have flash means that they're always playing into it face up, right? So unlike Notion Thief or similar, where you can, or Hull Breacher or whatever, where you can sometimes like snag the draw, this they always like get the knowledge, unless of course you have Monument. But Monument
and I think it's also worth pointing out that we just got a card that I think is gonna do this card's job, but mostly better, which is Envious Geist from the MSC community submissions. Which it's a little different, but like it doesn't give them the option of paying. It has flying, and it can draw off of your opponent just drawing their regular card as long as you have less cards in hand than them. So there's a little bit more hoops to jump through, but I think that card is overall more powerful than this.
Alright, let's go on to the next card, which is a canon reprint in the form of Legion Angel. I don't actually think there's a lot to talk about with Legion Angel. I think it's a fairly decent card for some mid-range decks, but I think there's a lot of hard competition for like white mid-rangey 4-drop value creature or value planeswalker or similar. So I don't think this should cause anyone to change the sort of deck they're building or change the sort of deck they're playing. But if you're in the market for this is a powerful card, or fairly powerful at least.
I'm not even sure like what white 4-drops are currently seeing play.
Right now, both the Wanderer of Many Paths and Ico.
Okay, but that's like kind of a specific archetype, right? Like I feel like I mean I don't know. I've played with Legion Angel. I don't think it's modern playable. I think it's maybe fringe Pioneer playable, and MSEM is basically Pioneer with good mana. So
you see,
like,
what you're forgetting is you put this first. You put this with Helena, so then you just curve Helena into this, and then her -1 exile stuff. Crazy. Next, you play Angel Caller, and then and then it adds 2 mana. Or no, wait, yeah.
I also think if you're a deck that has like a really reliable toolbox engine and is able to search creatures well, this is a good silver bullet to have for grindy matchups, because just being able to tutor like your 4-in-1 Army of the Can when you just have turns to spend, I think is potentially pretty valuable. But otherwise, I don't really see a good use for this.
It depends.
I kind of hate cannibalizing your sideboard that much, though. Like,
it's only 3 slots. I don't think it's that big a deal.
And depending on how you're toolboxing, what's the card? It's the Black Make card.
Warden of the Dead.
Yeah, that if your toolbox allows you to like just keep getting copies of those, it's sort of like, okay, this is another way to just accrue. I guess it depends if you're just trying to put this down and immediately draw 3 instead of like giving yourself the thing of like, okay, I can just keep getting these. But yeah, okay. Right. Next up is going to be Pull Away, which honestly, since I haven't been playing the format recently, I've not gotten to play with this card yet, but I'm very excited to.
I don't think anyone else has either, to be honest.
Hersey has, actually, because...
Okay, well that's the special case, because Hersey will play anything if it's like a generic rule spell that costs 3 more.
Well, yeah, that's the thing, is specifically this took the place of End of All Things, which we'll discuss later. Although we've already discussed it on this medium. But in decks with shifting lands, because getting the triple density on curve is apparently really hard in those. Whereas Pull Away is only double density.
Should we say what it does for the podcast people?
Oh yeah, probably.
Yeah, it's a 3-mana instant, costs 1 white. Put target non-land permanent on the bottom of its owner's library. That's what you care about. There's also this flavor text where you gain life equal to the number of poison counters its owner has. Like, that's never going to happen. So, for the most part, it's just 3 mana for a generic. tuck on any non-permanent, which is not bad. I don't think we've ever actually seen that effect before.
No, we had one in Altavok that gave the permanence controller 5 life.
Yeah.
But that's it.
So I mean, you're never gonna play that card again, obviously, because
Yep.
you just have this. I mean, I don't know. We've played with Journey's End a fair amount, so we kind of know the relative risks of putting something on the bottom. It's not always going to come up, but in the cases where it matters, it really matters.
Yeah,
so,
yeah.
You basically, if you run this card in your deck, and you think it's worth it for whatever reason, like Kersey described, or you just want a generic answer, and it's not a bad answer at all. You basically just need to make sure there's no like pod decks with a lot of ways to search the thing that you just binned, because then those are going to make this card feel not great.
Can you imagine playing this versus an Egg of Avarice deck? Probably feels pretty bad.
Yeah, I mean, you can at least get their egg.
That's also like a 3 mana removal spell versus Egg of Avarice decks, which that's actually a larger part of the issue.
Yeah, fair. But yeah, I think just this single color unconditional removal is just something that's I think it's worth mentioning.
The next card, Speaker of Deliverance, is not currently playable, but there were some stupid combos with it before it entered the format. So it's 1 white.
I mean, I don't think it's unplayable.
I think the fact so it's a 1/1. It has Gestalt, and if you would gain life, you can put a +1/+1 counter on this creature instead. When it has toughness 20 or greater, you win the game. So things that change is you could put that.
Wait, we need to explain what Gestalt does.
I guess we have to.
Yeah.
Okay.
So Gestalt. Okay, you know how with Mutate, when you play a card with Mutate, you pay an alternative cost, and you merge it. You merge it either on top or on the bottom of a creature you control, right? Gestalt doesn't have an alternate cost. What it does have is basically a thing with Gestalt can merge with another thing whenever it enters the battlefield or whenever another thing enters the battlefield, kind of like Soul Bond, right? So it doesn't cost any extra mana, and basically what you can do is you can kind of just automatically Voltron all your stuff together, and have the biggest power and toughness plus all the abilities that you want on the same permanent. And they actually don't have to share card types, so you can have you can merge your Gestalt creature under your enchantment, having it be an enchantment with your creature's abilities and stuff like that. Anything you want to add, guys, or did I do a good job explaining it?
You did a great job explaining.
I would clap, but cool. I'm holding my mic.
So this card in particular is so before it entered the format, it was you may put that many +1/+1 counters on this creature, which obviously that does some really busted things. We had, I think, turn 3 kills in the format off the back of it, but in general, just curving this into stand unassailable gives you a functionally 3 mana 8/8, which is very hard to actually tangle with. Since the nerf, the main reason I'm really low on this card is it is anti-synergistic with any other life gain payoffs you have. Since it replaces the life gain, that kind of makes it hard to utilize effectively.
Yeah, I think the only reason you're playing this at this point is if you have a way to quickly put its toughness to 20, because it's actually not a
upkeep trigger.
Yeah, so if you do have a way to just get a bunch of 1 life gains over and over again, then this lets you just insta win. Or if you just make a big creature, you can just play this and win. That also works. So I don't know. I don't think it's unplayable. I'm sure there's going to be some stupid combo eventually where someone figures out how to make toughness 20 on turn 2 and then just plays this, and it's okay, cool. But yeah, I mean, I don't think it's playable as a standalone card anymore.
Yeah, I think that about sums it up.
All right.
And I think the next card is our last white card. It's one that's been mentioned briefly earlier. It's Wanderer of Endless Paths. 2 white for a legendary planeswalker with no type. Once each turn, you may activate a loyalty ability of a planeswalker you control as though none of its loyalty abilities have been activated this turn. +1, you gain 1 life for each loyalty ability you've activated this turn. Scry 1. 0, put a +1/+1 counter on target creature. It can't attack or block until your next turn. And -3, exile target creature with power 4 or greater. So, lots of stuff going on here on its own, because already the choice complexity there is pretty high, because it's like, okay, how do I want to sequence this? I want to, like, because you can't, because if you 0 and then -3, it's just going to instantly die. If you +1 and then 0, you can't kill the creature immediately, assuming that, let's say, it had power 3, and then there's so many other, like, little situations. And then this is not even considering the fact that you can curve a 3-mana Planeswalker into this and then just go ham. It feels like a card that, like, I think there's been lots of talk about, like, flexibility and, like, how important is that when, like, when a format grows faster. Like, even if a card is flexible, if it's more expensive, is it worth it? And I think this is, like, peak flexibility in a way that, like, actually is relevant and interesting because of the way that it extends that flexibility to other planeswalkers you control.
The weird thing about this card to me is I feel like it's very specific at doing, like, it's flexible at doing things, but the things it does well are not flexible. It does a couple things very well. It can stonewall 2 attackers forever. It can give you free activations of your other planeswalkers, which, you know, like a free Chainveil passive is pretty good, especially if you have, like, another walker that really abuses that. And it can kill big things. So what this can do is, if your opponent has 1 creature, you can go 0/+1 until that creature is big enough, and then you can -3, right? But that's also kind of situational because, like, you need to, like, that's going to take time. Your opponent will only have that 1 creature that you're locking down. So I feel like, for me, this can do a lot of things, but I don't think it's doing very many things well enough to include. Unless you are doing the Planeswalker Voltron thing, which I think is actually good.
Yeah, so the thing that has made this card kind of have a renaissance is its synergies with Ico. So Ico has a +1 that allows you to basically flicker any other thing for 1 mana. So with that plus the Wanderer of Endless Paths, you can gain a very large amount of life, because each time you flicker the Wanderer, you can reactivate Ico an additional time. So you can keep +1ing the Wanderer to gain 1 life, then 2 life, then 3 life, then 4 life, and so on. I've gotten the chance to play with the Wanderer in that deck fairly recently, and the card's good. It doesn't feel flexible, straight up. Like, the 0 and -3 only do one thing, and that's answer creatures. And they don't answer creatures, like, in a particularly nuts way. The +1 is good, but in matchups where the life gain doesn't matter, this card just is a Scry 1 engine, which is a little bit rough for 4 mana.
Yeah,
So,
I think you described what I said, but better.
Yeah. I think the card is good, but I think you need to be somehow abusing the passive to make it worth playing. I definitely would not recommend just putting this in random control decks.
Sweet. Alright, so should we move on to blue?
Yeah.
Okay, so next up is Elusive Hunter. It is a 1 blue for a 3/2 with flash, and it has an activated ability. Blue, put Elusive Hunter into its owner's library, second from the top. Counter up to 1 target spell unless its controller pays 2. So what do you guys think?
Seems kind of mid? Am I crazy?
So, I think the thing to compare this to, middling. I think the thing to compare this to is stuff like Vengeful Messenger or Seal of Approval, and I think it compares fairly well. Honestly, the fact that it can hit any spell, not just non-creatures, is huge. The fact that it doesn't kill it, it just tucks it, is pretty huge. It's also up to 1, so if there's some circumstance where this would die without it being a spell involved, you can still technically save it. I think the main thing that's awkward is its body isn't actually that good in MSEM context. So,
yeah, I gotta say, I'm not convinced on this card at all. I think it's just straight up bad.
Okay.
There are multiple reasons for that. I think in a world where we didn't have Vengeful Messenger, I would be more receptive to the possibility of playing this card. However, I don't think that the difference between 1 and 2 toughness is meaningful for the most part. I think the loss of flying is huge, and I think having to pay a blue to use the ability is also really huge. Tucking is like neat, but it doesn't. It keeps you neutral on cards. It can potentially put you in a later game, put you later in the game where this is actually a bad draw because your opponent might have the mana to pay for their spells. So all in all, like really, this doesn't do very many things better than Vengeful Messenger, and it does a lot of things worse.
Mm-hmm. And I feel like stuff like Seal of Approval in the past, I feel like have sort of like, even in like Banned Flash in the old days, just have not been as good as like our other threats, because like having to like use them to like having to take a threat off the board to answer something sucks, when you can just have like Cane Dancer, Powder Scatterer, Veilborn Meddler, all of which obviously have their own hoops. They're not just like, hey, pay 4 mana and it's a counterspell, but or like you need other resources to set up Cane Dancer and Veilborn, but they give you the threat. They leave you with the threat while also being an answer, which is big.
Yeah.
All right. So moving on to the next one. Ethereal Sneak is 1 blue for a 1/2. When you draw your second card each turn, put a ++1 counter on it. This card's fine. I think it's substantially worse than that one Elmari card in red.
Current Surfer?
Yeah.
There's also a Patient Optimizer, which is kind of this with 1 less toughness and a lot of upsides.
Yeah, especially because that card gets hexproof, like the first proc, which is kind of huge. I think this card is similar. Like, I can see someone playing it. But we're at the point where our Xerox threats are just so ridiculously good that I think you'd need to make a really compelling argument for playing this.
So I think like if you're specifically trying to do like prowess but draw 2, you know what I mean? Then like you could maybe make an argument for this as like, I need more density of the 1-drop threats that can grow from drawing cards. But besides that, I think we have better options.
Okay.
So next up, we've got Mirror Reality. Blue, sorcery. Next time you cast an instant or sorcery spell this turn, copy that spell. You may choose new targets for the copy. And it has the acquiesce mechanic we mentioned earlier. It's basically, you want to see me do this again? But yeah, I'm interested as to why this card is on the list.
Well, it's actually won a GP, right?
Yeah, it's I think the only card in BY. Well, not the only card. It's one of the few new cards in BYK to win a GP so far.
Goddamn. Okay. Well, I have been out of the loop.
It's been played in the Rune Brawler deck.
I saw this card cause someone to take 15 damage from a burning up on turn 4. Where there was a Sanjin coming down on end step, untap, cast Mirror Reality, swing song, post combat, you cast burning up, 15 ball them, they're just dead.
Yeah, I mean it's really not that hard to imagine because this is a double fork for 2 mana potentially.
It's also like the really powerful type of fork where it's the next time you cast a spell, so you can't even get 2 for 1.
Yeah,
which is huge.
Like, I mean, even if you don't acquiesce it right away, you still just get a fork, and then later you can just get another free fork. Like, this card is actually really, really bonkers.
I guess I'm just undervaluing the potential to acquiesce it, and I think that's probably where I'm missing. Because I'm trying to like imagine the decks that you would want to acquiesce this in and also use it in. But then you just add burn to the decks and then they're dead. I
think Cane Dancer in particular makes acquiescing this like very easy because you're Cane Dancering, you're Portal Fracturing, you are bountying, and Cane Dancer. This is like another Cane Dancer target, so it helps with your density for those kind of things. I think this actually just slots into a lot of things very well. Cane Dancer even lets you cast this at instant speed too, so
makes sense. Okay.
Yeah.
Definitely
I actually am with you. I definitely underrated this when I first looked at it, but it's proven to be very strong.
Yeah,
in the
man,
hands of.
it feels so weird because I'm still like pre-format. I'm still here with my pre-format goggles looking at all of this, but y'all have been
Yeah.
playing with these cards for a while, so
Well, I haven't been playing. I've just been looking at the decks people play.
fair,
Yeah.
fair. Mhm.
And the last card is a card I have registered, and I just want to warn people not to. So, Succumb to Dreams is 1 in a blue enchantment. At the beginning of each opponent's end step, if no spells controlled by that player resolve this turn, you get a 1/1 illusion with this gets +1/+1 for each other illusion you control. This looks amazing on paper because, especially in control mirrors, it's really easy for this to come down before they can answer it, and then it kind of forces them to play on sorcery speed, which in like these weird blue mirrors, that's not great. The issue, though, is twofold. One, you have to tap out on turn 2, which means that if they have a scary 2-drop threat, they can also jam it. And then you need to basically just hope that your 2-drop threat's better than theirs. 2, if you get 1 token off of this, and then it gets like Pit Wilted or otherwise answered, this card's bad. Like, you would not spend 2 mana for a 1/1 illusion. If you get 2,
well,
it
you got
starts
a
getting
1/1 illusion that went even in cards.
Sure, you did an Elvish Visionary thing.
Yeah.
Still, that's not really where you want to be. So you need to get multiple tokens before this is like actively good. And in general, most of our control decks are just kind of, they have proactive things to be doing right now. Like true draw go control is not very present. So I played this in a like heart attack style blue mess control pile. And had it in against Hersey and had it on turn 2 in one of those games when Hersey didn't have an immediate answer, and it still didn't really do anything. And I think those are kind of like the ideal circumstances for the card.
So I believe everything you're saying. However, I do want to point out that this says if no spells controlled by that player resolved this turn.
Oh yeah.
So you can actually prevent them from stopping this by countering their stuff.
Yeah.
Do you think that doesn't really change it in your opinion, or?
I don't think so. Because ultimately that's not super the angle you want to have to be fighting. And it's possible that this changes if you're in a tempo deck or something, but even then, I don't really want to play things out at sorcery speed. I think my matchup versus control is probably good enough already. But
maybe
it's not
the kind of
control
card
mirror
that you
breaker
could
I thought it was.
Maybe it's the kind of card you could bring in some sideboard scenarios, but
yeah,
I'm not you're right that it doesn't feel like something that's going to shit on control. So I'm not sure where exactly it will.
Yeah, my thought process was it is good versus control and combo, because again, versus combo, if they're resolving their spells, you're dead anyway. So you just want to be stopping them from resolving their spells, and this is a cheap threat, so maybe that's good enough. But again, in practice, you don't want to tap out turn 2 versus combo, and 2, most of our combo decks are cantrip heavy. So they can just set themselves up, and while they're setting up, you don't want to be countering their cantrips, so they're just denying you any draw off of this, or any tokens off this.
Yeah, it's definitely weird. I mean, we put in a
we almost nerfed
thing
it,
to nerf it. Yeah, and then I was like, guys, isn't this card just absolute garbage now? And then everyone was like, yeah, okay, we can unnerve it.
So we thankfully didn't do that, and even then, I've been disappointed with it. So
yeah,
we'll see. Maybe someone will find a better list. Maybe the secret's to actually main deck this, and take it out in the matchups where it's bad, rather than sideboard it and bring it in the matchups where it's good. I'm not sure, but basically, unless you have a specific plan for why this is like a good fit in your deck, I think it's much worse than it looks.
Yeah. All right, so moving on to black, let's talk about what I think may actually be the weirdest card in this set full of weird cards. And it's Black Hole Musings. It is 1 BB for a sorcery, and it's our first revelation, I think, that we're talking about. So the sorcery says you lose 1 life and exile the top card of your library. You may repeat this process any number of times. Then you put up to 2 cards exiled this way into your hand. You can coalesce it for 7 mana, which basically means you flashback it, and then afterwards you put it onto the battlefield as a creature. And the creature part is a creature with 7 toughness and power equal to the number of cards in exile. So there's a lot going on here. But the very base is a spell that you can either just cast as like a 3 mana Sign in Blood, or you can cast as basically a Spoils of the Vault that lets you like look at a very large number of cards from your deck and pick 2 that you want. Spoils of the Vault isn't exactly the right comparison, but I don't know what is. And it has a flashback that lets you do this again. That comes with just a massive fucking creature. So like, I think there's a lot of potential value here, but it's also you're potentially losing a lot of life, and it's very slow. So what do you guys think?
Yeah, I'm kind of in that boat where I'm very unconvinced in the power of this card. I think that it's just the hard sell here to me is that this is at all a good fair card. And just because 3 mana, sorcery speed, you get some good selection, but you have to pay a bunch of life for a good selection, and the kind of base case is a 3 mana like Night's Whisper type thing. We just have really busted Night's Whisper equivalents. So the place where I'd want this is in a combo deck.
Mhm.
But we have, I can't remember the name, but it's that Pyramids of Atum card where
Tainted Pact. No.
It's like Sinister Pact or something
Sinister
like that.
Pact, that's it, yeah.
I
think it's Sinister
yes.
Pact.
Yeah, it is Sinister Pact. Which I think is just this but better in combo.
And the problem is if you're doing degen shit by just like paying 19 life or whatever, then you don't freaking care about the coalesce at all.
Yeah.
So, that's the
oh boy,
other
I get
thing.
to draw 2 cards. Ooh.
Yeah.
It's like,
I don't know. Maybe it's
Did
like,
the C play in like what do you call it? Oh my god, what's the name of the combo deck?
I think I know you're talking about
Casino Scam. Yeah. Did this ever do anything in Casino Scam?
No, because I don't think Casino Scam in its like ideal version overlapped with this card. I might be wrong about that.
Wait, so if you do, isn't this just a cheaper All or Nothing?
I think that it was discussed.
Oh no, but it only gets you 2 cards. Never mind.
It only gets you 2 cards, which is
Yeah.
really hard. Like there are hands where you can combo off there,
Yeah.
but there's not actually a lot.
Yeah. I would rather just pay the extra 1 mana and cast All or Nothing.
And also All or Nothing is instant speed, which is huge. And
wait, how are Casino Scam decks winning now?
There's been so Hersey and I discussed a couple of options. One of them is just run lethal amounts of burn in your deck that you can use as removal spells, and then you kill them with it if you draw your deck.
Rolls or something?
No, because you have it changes. It means that you can't do the turn 4 on the play, kill on their end step type thing, but
Thank God.
do have lethal otherwise. The build I was suggesting does still have that, which is you play Kagetsu and have 4x villainy in your deck, which gives you a villainy.
Like, that was the old pre-last.
Okay, I don't want to talk about this anymore. I'm getting getting nauseous.
That was the OG plan back when JN built the deck, where you cast 4 villainies and then a Dark Bargain and your opponent just imploded.
Cool. So, yeah, I don't know. This card's fucking weird, man. That's all I gotta say.
Is it a song reference to something as well?
No, it was something that randomly came up in MSE.
Okay. What am I thinking of?
It was...
I'll look it up. Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, no. It was a song reference.
Oh, hell yeah.
Muse.
Okay, cool. Because I was like, this sounds like a song name. I feel like I've heard someone be like, "Man, I'm a big fan."
Why would I literally ever know about cards named after songs? That just doesn't make any sense.
Very often.
Wait, okay, maybe it isn't named after a song because I googled Black Hole Musings and the first thing to show up is the Plane Sculptor's page. So now I'm confused.
No,
seems unlikely then.
It's a reference to and Revelations by Muse. Black Hole Musings.
Got you.
Anyway.
Let's talk about a card that's not... Actually, this card's also fucking weird.
I think you've discovered the secret of the set, Dodger.
Okay, so the next card is Hungering Cult. It is a 2-mana 2/4 with lifelink, which are very good stats. It has a drawback, which is whenever another creature enters the battlefield under your control, Hungering Cult deals 3 damage to it. Notably, that will proc this lifelink. So, there are some very weird things you can do with this. like where you can actually use the deal 3 as a benefit if you want your creatures to die a lot, or you just want to gain a shit ton of life by making a bunch of creatures and then feeding them to the cult. It is not. It is not. It is mandatory. You have to deal 3 damage. So you cannot play anything with 3 or less toughness and have it stick around. Which this actually, I believe, screwed me over. I think when I played this against Burn, and my opponent played Rage of the Ravaged. So not only was I unable to play any more creatures, but I also just could not gain life, and I was stuck with this thing on the board and just easily died to Burn. So that was unlucky. But then this won me the game the next time I played against Burn, and they didn't have Rage the Ravage. So I don't know. Yeah, for my personal perspective on this card, I really enjoyed having it around because when I played on Earth, that deck pays a lot of life, and there hadn't really been a good lifelink creature or like way to gain life that I could run against Burn, and I was actually reduced to running Bearer of Lantern that I couldn't cast in my sideboard just so I could try and unearth it against Burn. But now there's this, which is serviceable, so that's cool. But I think other people have been running it in like various other kinds of decks, right? I don't remember exactly what. But do you remember that?
I don't remember, but I know people have been playing it in just a bunch of different sideboards. I'll just check decklist channel.
Is it like for the life gain use, or is it like
it is for life
comboing?
gain use almost entirely.
Okay. So nobody's doing like weird like persist combos with this or something?
No, Mono Black Valdez plays 4x copies in the sideboard.
Wait, okay. You want to wait to get a shit ton of life for that Speaker of Deliverance? Like this feels like the way to do it.
Well,
right?
Speaker of Deliverance, you only gain 1 life at a time. Like
right.
Life
Never mind. I forgot we
actually help that much.
Okay, yeah.
Yep. Also, Four Color Minister played a couple copies of the sideboard, and Bug Poison played 4x in the sideboard. So yeah, it is just like the go-to like post Snowfield Mother. I need a card that helps me shit on Burn creature.
There you go. Yeah, I mean the fact that Burn doesn't really usually run cards that can deal 4 is probably what makes this quite good. Although we've actually seen Burn decks kind of shifting to that because of other meta-related things. So yeah. That's interesting. Yeah. Anything else you want to talk about with this card, Caillou, or should we move on to perhaps the most contentious card in the set?
Yeah, I actually you covered everything I want to talk about, so let's get it.
Okay. So the next card is Infectious Ego.
Wait, I didn't realize this was up next. Oh, fuck this card.
It is a 4-mana 4/4 with lifelink. Whenever Infectious Ego enters the battlefield or attacks, target opponent chooses a permanent they control. Then they may give themselves a poison counter. If they do, they sacrifice that permanent, and if they don't, then you get it, you gain control of it, and you untap it. I'm going to let you guys talk about this first, and then I have my thoughts.
Okay, I guess I don't really have like crazy thoughts on this. I guess my thought is that I'm not super surprised that it found a home in MSEM, but I am. I guess I just thought that like MSEM at a certain point had become fast enough that this would not be as relevant, especially since there are also lots of ways that there are a lot more ways that you can pump out tokens. And if you're wondering, what do you mean lot more? This was redesigned to mimic a card called Merciless Shieldbreaker, which was a red version of this that dealt them 4 damage.
That also took 2 turns to activate, though.
Yeah, so this is both instant and also,
and didn't have lifelink.
Yeah, and you would think that reading this card is always crazy because you read it and it's like, oh, they may give themselves a poison counter, and then if they do, they don't have a bad thing happen to that permanent. And it's like, no, the bad thing happens either way. The permanent is gone. And it's like, oh, okay, thanks. I guess I'll just fucking die. But yeah, this is one of those cards where it's like, it definitely feels awful to see your opponent drop it. Just on so many axes, yeah.
Pip, do you want to say anything?
Yeah.
First? Okay.
I can, chat briefly.
Sure.
I thankfully have mostly dodged playing against this card so far. The fact that it's 4 mana, I think, is one of the things that's kind of helped push the format again away from Pithwilt and Cursory Glance, which for a brief window we were starting to race back to the bottom with those again. So yeah. briefly
I mean,
appreciate that about that.
this is one of the cards that has people shifting to 4 damage
Yep,
burn
burn spells.
spells. Yeah.
Because otherwise, how the fuck do you beat this in burn?
But the problem is that because of the ETB, it's like even if you do have your removal spell, you still lost the permanent at the very least.
Yeah, it's still
Um,
doing the 2-for-1 thing.
Yeah.
This card is pretty cracked. I also think the fact that it's a spirit is kind of neat. We do have spirit synergies. I haven't seen anyone use
We
that
do?
yet.
Aren't those only in High Noon?
Zulev Offering? Or Zulev
Oh,
whatever?
right.
I felt like there was another one, but I might just be misremembering.
Okay.
And there's one Shaman Tribal card that's playable, and it's from this set. But yeah, I think this card is like a pretty terrifying card to deal with. And it's not going to surprise anyone that it is something that we will be hitting this month probably.
Yeah. So okay, I have a couple notes on this card. Obviously this card's cracked. It's been seeing a lot of play. When the card, I think when we first released our balance patch for BYK, I think someone was like, "Wow, can't believe they didn't nerf this card." And then everyone was talking about the best way to play this card is by ritualing it out. And I gotta say, I really hate it when people build those kinds of decks because those decks have so many hands that just do nothing. I like you really don't have to build that kind of deck to run this kind of card that's just so good on its own. Like just play Jund with Mana Dorks or whatever, you know? Like it's really not, you don't have to that's kind of a whole other thing. Regarding this card itself, I actually really hate this design personally because one, I feel like it's just doing too many things, especially with kind of like the snowballing nature of it, where if your opponent doesn't have a permanent right away, then they're just going to get LD'd, and then it's going to make it harder for them to come back, and then they're just going to keep falling further and further behind. But it's also good when you're behind because it's a 4/4 with lifelink, so there's not really like an inherent weakness there. And on design level, I really don't like how the poison counter kind of feels like an afterthought, you know? Like
Yeah.
the scenario where anything besides them sacrificing the permanent happens is like almost never going to happen, you know? So that part just feels like flavor text. And it feels like the design was trying to do something cool and then did something boring and insanely powerful instead. So
Well, what was the previous version of this? I remember it being like it was like 2 and a black for an enchantment.
Yeah, it was something unplayably bad.
I think it was like sort of like a Phyrexian Unlife variant.
Yeah, there was something like that. Hersey did an overhaul of the set at one point based on feedback they got, where the poison stuff was too parasitic, and their goal was to make poison cards do something on their own, even if your opponent wasn't at lethal amounts of poison.
One thing that this card did, which I think is very cool, is this card and another card that I don't think is actually on our list, but enabled like an actual viable poison deck.
Yeah.
Like with another Poison Matters card from another set, and I actually thought that was really neat that someone was able to 5-0 with that, and like have it not be a meme.
Pretty exciting.
Yeah.
The one other thing I would just like tag on to all the things that we've been discussing is, I think this card is like actually an appropriate power level for the format, as long as it's not locking someone out of the game. Like the games where this comes down, like actually on turn 4 or whatever. Or otherwise they like have a disposable permanent. Like it is still a very powerful card, but it is not a card that like is objectively misery inducing, I guess is the way I would phrase it.
I think my issues with like the card on a design level are kind of separate from power level. Those are two different things.
Yeah, that's cans.
All right. I think we've talked about this card enough.
Yeah, basically the discussion was that one like JoJo's GIF where all 3 people are kicking.
All right. Let's move on to Callum, Bound by Violence. So this is a returning character from Hersey's Tourney at Whiterun set, I believe, or is it Plagues at Creport?
I'm pretty sure it's Plagues actually.
I think it's Plagues. Yeah.
So Callum is a 3-mana planeswalker with 2 loyalty. As long as there are 7 or more loyalty counters on Callum, she has lifelink and death touch. And her abilities are +2, 2 damage to each opponent, +1, 1 damage to target creature or planeswalker. so you can see how those abilities would be pretty good with Lifelink or Death Touch. But she also starts with only 2, so it takes a while to get there. The ultimate is, for each opponent, she deals 3 damage to that player unless they discard a card. Repeat this process 6 times. I think this is on a Canon Planeswalker,
Yes.
but I believe this card was designed before that card was released.
Yeah, it was about 6 months before Liliana,
Yeah.
Professor Onyx, has that.
Yeah.
And Percy was like, what?
Wow, okay,
funny.
I did not know that. That's an incredibly specific thing to be
Yeah.
sniped for.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's basically it's only unless they discard a card. So it's not quite tormenting.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, since it's just discard a card, this is usually just gonna kill them, right? Like,
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Which is, especially since +2ing does 2 damage to them. I mean, I gotta be honest. I don't think this card is very good at all.
Yeah, I feel like for what do you call it? Sulfuric Vortex Planeswalkers, we've got Eiltizan.
Yeah, Eiltizan just does so much more things than this at a much better rate. I don't know. Yeah, I think we're just talking about this because we usually talk about Planeswalkers, but
Yep.
I mean, I don't know. Do you disagree, Pip?
No.
Or yeah,
No,
okay, cool.
I think this card is basically like the first ability doesn't exist unless your Planeswalker is snowballed out of control, and in which case, like, good for you, I guess. Like,
I think people have mentioned using Planeswalkers that get high loyalty and combining that with this card and Dimensional Reshaper to basically like cheat the loyalty cost of
which,
using
like,
the ultimate.
I mean, at that
Is
point,
that
why don't
the
you just like
best
ult
thing to be
something
doing?
else?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean that feels like utter jank to me, but that's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that like
Alright.
compared to most of the Planeswalkers we usually talk about, though, just by virtue of being cheap, this does, and also potentially having immediate board presence, like being able to lock out 1 toughness creatures. I think that this feels
It
more
at least
playable
does
than,
kill all the one toughness.
yeah, it feels
Yeah.
more playable than the usual chaff Planeswalkers we talk about. I will give it that. I don't know where it sees play right now, so fucking whatever to that. But yeah.
Yeah. All right. Next up, we have Litany of Fallen Blades. It is a 2-mana sorcery. Target player discards a card. If they can't, you draw a card and they lose 2 life. And then it's got Acquiesce, which is the previously discussed kind of like Saboteur Rebound mechanic. This card is pretty close to a Wrench Mind. If you have a way to hit them, especially if you play this like on turn 2 after a 1-drop. I know that we've been seeing more decks that try to go like with a kind of like aggro rec style, I think, with the inclusion of cards like Valdez. This card seems pretty good for those decks because it actually it's a discard spell that actually does something when their hand is empty, which is of course kind of the main weakness of discard spells, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. I think it seems pretty good to me, actually.
I agree. I think this card is very good if this is the sort of thing you're in the market for. I think Hersey's playing it in one of the Dark Canada variants that they've been playing around with, which is basically Mardu aggro. I don't know if Mono Black Valdez plays it.
Yeah, my main criteria for running this card is like, do I have enough good 1-drops to curve this after?
Yep, 100%.
Yeah. And that's pretty much my only criteria, honestly.
Yeah, this is actually a card where, as a control player, if they have this, I'm like, it's a little bit groan inducing. Like you have plenty of counterplay, but it's definitely a strong card for them to have versus you.
Yeah, it's sort of like how often can you make this a Wrench Mind on turn 2? And if you like at a certain point, you would rather just run Curse of the Drow instead, right?
Yeah. And the other thing I would just say is the fact that this isn't an awful top deck in the way most Wrench Mind effects are is so huge to its playability.
Yeah. Anything you want to add, Caillou?
No, I think the main thing is, like the other Acquiesce card we talked about, I was sort of like, what is the play case for this, especially with Curse of the Drow? But then from having Pip explain it, that makes a lot more sense.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think I'm evaluating these as though you're getting the front face and then getting the Acquiesce as sort of like sometimes a bonus, whereas the reality it seems to be in plays like you can just count it as though getting the Acquiesce is a not negligible hoop, a negligible hoop based on your deck building.
Yeah. All right, Kai, you want to talk about the next card?
Okay, next up we've got Reduce to Naught. One
Mm-hmm.
in a black, instant, and it's pretty simple. Diabolic Edict, but also, hey, upside. If they don't have a creature anymore, you gain 3 life. So, I mean, I think that, like, it's weird because MSEM's, like, got, like, a good removal suite already, but then this is just, like, quite nice against aggro, where it's like, okay, um, especially if you're on the play, where they go turn 1, Banished Companion, hit you, and then you go turn 2, Reduce to Not, kill your Banished Companion, and also I will gain back that life and then some, for example. Um,
This
I
card
don't.
is such a Hersey design. I gotta say,
It's a
if there's
slightly
one thing,
overpriced.
no, if there's one thing Hersey does well, it's design removal spells that absolutely beat the living shit out of aggro.
Yep.
That is like Hersey's one mission in life. It feels like to me.
I think one thing that's kind of neat about this card, which I hope to God never comes up,
Yeah.
is you can also use it on yourself if your opponent has 2 creatures and you need the 3 life.
Oh,
Because
yeah, it's kind of neat.
let's be honest, there should not be a circumstance in which that comes up, but if it does, props to you.
If they try to burn you to death, you just play this, and it's like, nah, I'm gonna live.
Yeah, I get one more turn.
Yeah.
Honestly, the biggest issue with this card is how many fucked up edicts we have, especially at 2 mana. Like,
Yeah, it's competing with a lot.
this is competing with like Memento Mori, in a very real way. If you're in like 3 color decks, maybe the second black symbols like
I
kind of an
do
issue.
really think this has
But
like I do think this is actually very comparable to Memento Mori though.
I strongly agree.
Yeah.
I think if you show up at a GP with this instead of Memento Mori, I don't think you're wrong. I just think you made a meta call that you're
Yeah.
more worried about aggro than you are worried about graveyard decks.
Or at the very least a mana base call.
Yeah, or a mana base
Yeah.
call. But like even if someone showed up on mono black villainy with this, I wouldn't be like, you're trolling. You have to be playing Memento Mori. It's so much
Yeah.
better. Um,
Yeah.
but
All
also
right.
Memento Mori's been in the format for like 3 years now, so it's kind of okay if it's getting usurped.
I mean, I don't think it's getting usurped. I think it's just I like having additional options that allows you
Oh
to
yeah,
express skill in deck building. You know, like I think that's great.
that is very much your
Yeah.
brand.
Yeah.
All right, so let's talk about Reclusive Augur. I put this on here because I think this card's kind of fucked, but in a really subtle way. So Reclusive Augur's 1 black for a 1/1. That's all it does on the battlefield. However, it is 2 black, exile it from your graveyard, return another target creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield. Activate only during your turn. So, obviously it's not Dread Return. You have to have mana to activate this. However, Cranial Violation already sees a non-zero amount of play, and this kind of feels better than it for me. Cranial Violation has upside in terms of binning your own reanimation target. I understand that. And sometimes being a relevant discard spell. But the hoop on exiling things is so much lower on this that I think at the very least it's worth considering. Additionally, any of our cards that allow you to bin creatures more easily, this is a creature that you can bin that is actually a reanimation spell. So I don't know. I think this card's kind of just nuts. I think it makes some deterministic reanimation piles. I can't think of any right now, but I'm pretty confident in that.
So okay, here's my issue with your logic.
Yeah.
This card doesn't bin itself. That's
Sure.
my biggest objection.
Yeah. Versus control.
I also strongly
Whatever.
I strongly disagree with your assertion that I would rather have a vanilla 1/1 than a card that lets me, like what's the card? Despise my opponent. Like I would much rather have a despise. And I don't think the 6 cards is like a particularly huge hoop to jump through. I think it's worth the
one thing that's
better like
a little
fair
bit
case.
One thing that's a little bit awkward about Cranial Violation is that it's not.
There's the potential to like force yourself to discard a card, right?
Yeah, and it reveals your hand, and I think that's actually a pretty big deal versus control decks.
Potentially, yeah.
But also
I don't know.
control decks can just exile this. I think that I probably sold this a little high, but I do think that this card.
If you are the kind of deck that wants a 1/1, this card could be good in that deck. Yeah,
Egg of Avarice decks, for instance.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, for sure. For sure.
I feel like this is a lot more fucked up in like non-MSEM formats, but yeah.
Right. There's also one other place where this card is kind of fucked up is something we've done a really good job not enabling, which is in decks that can mill large portions of their library at once to combo kill their opponents. this card does that. Does it do it better than Cranial Violation? No, it does it about as effectively.
Yeah.
But I think the fact that it's a creature could easily come up.
Mhm.
Like, this is the sort of card that if you put it in, like, Canon Magic, random Hermit Druid, like, Commander decks or whatever, start figuring out how to abuse this. Like, it's no Dread Return,
Yeah.
but the Dread Return would not be an acceptable card in, like, any modern design
By
set.
any standard.
Yeah.
I mean, we had a card that was kind of like fixed Dread Return
Yes.
for a while, right?
Yes, we did.
I
It
actually
was
like that card. That card is cool.
A dark period in
I-
MSEM's history.
I had issues with the design, but a lot of those issues more or less just boiled down to I don't think you can safely have Dread Return and Narcomoebas in the same format at the same time. And
Yeah.
we had both Narcomoebas and Dread Return. But
Yeah,
then
yeah,
we
yeah.
figured out like too busted of ways to do it.
Mhm.
All right.
Next up, we're going to have Still
Hmm.
Smoke Skirmisher. It's a 3/1 for 2, and when it dies, it drains 1. But if it died from being sacrificed, hey, you get it back at the beginning of the next end step.
Oh, it's the counter for the reduce and not meta.
True. I
And this card seems kind of whatever to me. I don't know.
It seems like the kind of card that's like fine, but Aristocrats already has so many fucked up pieces that I feel like it's hard to like justify putting this in the deck, I guess.
So
I
one
think
place where I
Autumnal
saw
Watch is the way to go with this if you are going places.
I
Because
saw
then you're just getting cards.
Purple Murasaki brewed a list using Selene the Cruel in this.
Oh, that's pretty good too.
Selene the Cruel, for anyone who's not familiar, is 1 in a blue for a 1/2, 2/2, can't remember. Whenever you cast
I think.
whenever you cast a spell, sacrifice another permanent you control, and you draw a card. And you can exile 3 cards from your graveyard to counter target non-creature spell unless its controller pays 1.
Yeah.
So,
Wait, that
so
card's kind of fucked, honestly.
yeah, that I am glad I don't need to play against that card more because people don't do it. But yeah. This card is just like the same like little incremental value that Hersey loves. Like it's the same deal as Small Luxuries, you know.
Yeah.
But it's on a 2-mana 3/1 that like drains your opponent on death. So I think its best spot is in those Aristocracy decks which have aggro hands.
I like
rather
this.
than-
I like this more with Autumnal Watch than Selene because you can just you just drain them automatically every turn, and it's like, all right, we're just doing this.
I think it's worse in any of the builds of Aristocrats that are like verging on combo. Like
Yeah.
I think if you have Egg of Avarice or anything like that, you do not want this card.
Yeah, actually, that's fair. Yeah, I guess that
but-
was kind of my original issue. Where it's like you could run this, but is it really like better than other things you could run? You know, that's kind of my main issue.
I think it's much better in standard styles formats where the
this could
Aristocrats
be a
decks
solid
are
standard
usually
card.
aggro decks.
Yeah.
Yeah, like playing this alongside Falconrath Aristocrat would have been awesome. But all right, let's head on. We have one last black spell.
Which one?
Yeah, so
It's
This
Understand Desolation, which is 1 black. It's
Oh.
additional cost to cast it. You exile a creature card from your graveyard. You draw 3 cards and you lose 3 life. I don't think this is going to make crazy waves anywhere, but then it's just a solid draw spell / another option to consider. That's all.
Yeah, I'm really not about this card, honestly.
I think
But,
it's only good in decks that. So, in Legacy, Delver has occasionally run Painful Truths in the sideboard to outgrind control. I think this card kind of does a similar thing where if you are a black creature-based deck and you need additional ways to outgrind control, you can run this card. I think that's a little bit worrisome because black
I feel like
creature-based
there are
decks
so many
should outgrind
creatures that
control.
can just outgrind anyway. Yeah, that's kind of my issue.
But I think that is a relevant thing to consider. If you're binning large chunks of your deck at once, this card is also good. But I think I don't think we have any existing Painful Truths variants that I can think of right now. Like I don't think we have any black 3-mana draw 3s. So
we lost one, right? I forgot about that.
I think this has a niche to it.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, okay. Maybe I will revise my initial judgment. All right. So next up we got, where is it? Grasp for Understanding, and we're breaking into red.
Yeah.
So this card is
spoiler,
a 4 mana instant. When you cast this spell, each other player may copy it. And the spell says, exile your hand and the top 7 cards of your library. Until the end of your next turn, you may play cards exiled this way. Yeah.
This card's just fucked. It's a 4 mana instant speed, draw 7. Obviously,
Kinda.
there's some asterisks there. And
I mean, it gives your opponent a free 7 cards too. So
well, it gives them a free 7 cards if they pitch their hand, and it's temporary. So
yeah,
control decks often can't actually afford to take the 7 cards here.
yeah, that's true. I mean, like I mean, most of the time when you're playing this, it's because you're comboing anyway, so it kind of doesn't really matter that you're giving your opponent cards unless they have permission.
No
in which case
interaction,
it's not
and
great.
they find interaction.
Yeah.
But also, like, we have red silences. I think there's been a lot of different combo decks people have been exploring recently, and this, I think, showed up in, like, the Rug Realms Overturning or whatever deck briefly.
Yeah, because that deck just made a buttload of mana.
And this card's really good if you have a lot of mana.
Yeah.
But I think in general, this card is, like, fairly strong in Storm-style shells. And
yeah, just because instant is really big.
I wouldn't be shocked if this shows up in, like, a very up-to-no-good fashion in the not-far future.
Yeah, I mean, I don't actually have a problem with the play patterns of this card, to be honest.
Mm-hmm.
Because, like, I think it inherently gives your opponent, like, it puts the onus on you to actually, like, execute the combo. And if people are trying to beat your combo, it helps them get the stuff to beat your combo, you know? So, I don't know. I mean, yeah, Soliloquy is a good point. But or whatever the red silence is called, but
it's Soliloquy.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I actually I think it's good to have good combo decks, right? And as far as combo deck enablers, I think this is actually a pretty healthy one. It's certainly much more interesting than just like cast infuse, win the game, you know?
Oh yes.
Yeah. So I don't know.
The next card's another impulse drawer, and it's one that I think is like kind of nuts, but no one else seems to think it, and I haven't seen anyone explore it, so maybe I'm just wrong, which is Slithering Eyes. So 1 in a red. Whenever it deals damage to a player, you exile that many cards from the top of your library until the end of your next turn. You may play those cards. It's 2/1. So it's a 2/1 for 2 that draws 2 cards when it hits your opponent.
I thought this card was nuts when it used to not say to a player.
Yes, I also agree with that. I think this card is still like pretty damn good. Like, I think if this comes down, it does a similar job to Masahita. Like, oh well, you have to attack with it and it has to get in. You need to untap with Masahita anyway. Like, there's going to be very few circumstances.
And Masahita also has 3 power.
Sure.
Yeah, like hitting someone is actually a lot different than untapping, in my opinion.
Yeah.
I mean, in the matchups where your opponent has creatures, Masahita is like at his worst, though.
No, well, because Masahita can sit there and he can trade, and you don't have to attack with him. Like,
and you take a bunch of damage. Like, I don't know. Maybe not at his worst. Like,
I mean, you take a bunch of damage, but also then like you either draw into your outs for whatever those creatures are, or you lose. Either way, if the top cards of your library didn't have any outs, then it's like, okay, you're gonna lose anyways. So might as well just lose faster.
Here's where I think this card is good. Decks with giant growths.
I was gonna say red-green counters probably should be playing this card.
Imagine strong arming this guy.
Yeah.
That's some value.
Fringe thing to consider is that it technically says when it deals damage, not combat damage. So if you have a way to like
turn into a pinger,
give this ability to ping.
Isn't there a Gestalt creature in this set that like is a pinger? Like crazy?
No, there's a creature that gives all your shamans the ping ability, and there's a lot of Gestalt shamans, so you can do it like in a roundabout way.
No. There's Heavenly Fire. Whenever this creature attacks, if it's merged, it deals 2 damage target player or planeswalker.
Okay, yeah, I forgot about that.
You still have to attack to ping.
That even.
Yeah. I don't know. Whatever.
And it gives you them until the end of your next turn.
Oh, and then you can curve into Molten Agitator. It's all coming together, baby.
Like, I think this card is just really powerful at what it does.
Yeah. I think if I'm going to Slithering Eyes, I'm going to be strong arming it. That's like my main, like, buff it up, give it trample. That's my goal.
Yeah.
I guess for me it just feels like a lot of stuff has to go right, is the way
Yeah.
it feels.
I
Like,
am with Caillou, yeah.
what is
But,
I feel like if
the
I'm in the
upside is
market for
there,
like
though.
if I'm in the market for 2 mana 2/1s that draw me
Okay,
cards,
okay.
I would just go for the
Let's
one
move to a
black
card
one.
that is actually ludicrous.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's true.
Okay. So, Solar Hatching. This card is actually just so stupid. It's 4 mana for 4 damage to each creature. That's already like not a bad
That's
rate,
playable.
honestly.
Yeah.
It's playable. Yeah, it'll. I mean, in this meta, like 4 is the magic number, right? But like also
4
4
mana
is
is kind of
usually
rough.
gonna kill most things. 4 mana is not great, but like it's doable, especially in people are playing decks like Big Red and decks that ramp. People are still running Confirm Hypothesis, Shifting Lands. You know, it has Coalesce for 8 mana, which again is doable. But also it's it's a flashback, so it's not like you need to do that. When this enters the battlefield, it's a 7/5. Each player chooses up to 2 lands they control and sacrifices the rest. You've played Wildfire before, right? And one of the big things about Wildfire is you need to have a way to take control of the board after both players lose pretty much everything, right? This card just gives you a fucking 7/5. It wipes the board and gives you 7/5. And it totally decimates your opponent's mana. I genuinely like if the wipe is at all relevant in the board state, I cannot imagine you losing a game where you coalesce this card. On top of this just being a good wrath at base. Like I think maybe it's not like a main board card, but in decks that generate a lot of mana or like that ramp a lot or big red style decks, just stuff like that. Like this card is incredibly powerful in as long as you're in a meta where the board wipe is relevant. Sorry, I just realized I ranted for like 2 minutes.
No.
I mean, that is.
I think
I literally asked, "Hey Dodger, can you put a Dodger pick on this list?" And this is the one. So you know.
Yeah, I mean, I think the fact that this wasn't on the list before I put it on is kind of weird. No, like this card's insane.
one thing that people speculate a lot about was Wish to See on this.
Yeah, you can definitely do that. I don't think it's like the best way to use it, but you can.
The main thing is that 2 lands left usually gives them enough mana to like answer this. Not 100% of the time, but usually.
Yeah, but it still demands an answer and decimated
100%.
Yeah.
I'm not saying this card's bad. I think this card is a powerful effect for a style of deck that isn't really, at the very least, isn't really seeing play in MSEM right now. I'm not gonna like say isn't playable, but like I think this card is a very good thing to be doing in that deck, but I don't think it's something that gets you to build that deck out of nowhere. If that distinction makes sense.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, I don't know. If I were still playing, I'd be interested in building around this card, but
yeah.
Yeah, you built around Fateful Eruption too, so it definitely seems up your alley.
Fateful Eruption is one of my favorites.
Okay, and with that, that's our last red card. And the first green card is also a hell of a doozy.
Yeah.
It's back in the pack, green, as additional cost to cast a spell, sacrifice a creature, search your library for a creature card with mana value equal to the sacrificed creature's mana value -1, put it onto the battlefield, and create a token that's a copy of that creature. Then shuffle. Now, I think I have the gist of how this works, but also I have not been around, so I'm going to leave it to someone who's actually been following how this deck works to explain it.
So there was a deck that used 4 of this card for Wellix Beyond, and besides that, did a bunch of pod chain shenanigans. The main thing you need to know about that deck is it used a card that's actually canon called Fate Stitcher, which if you discard it on turn 1 with a Weave from Chaff or some other way to do that, you can unearth it on turn 2 for 1 mana. It immediately will untap one of your lands, and then you can cast one of your second search cards to either get a 5-drop or 2 3-drops, right? And then that will set off a chain based on what ETBs you get, essentially. That is an interaction that I think is mostly Fate Stitcher's fault.
I agree.
Didn't decide to hit Fate Stitcher, but like if nobody's played that deck since it won a GP, so like we haven't really had a reason to hit it. But like if people start playing the deck a lot and we decide it's doing two busted things, then yeah, we'll probably hit Fate Stitcher.
Also, just like
Or
it being a
I won't,
cannon
but
card is
yeah.
just part of the package.
It's sort of like, yeah. I mean, I still think this card is kind of ludicrous. like if you take any 4-drop, I mean, if you take a 3-drop, right, you're getting 4 mana worth of stuff, in addition to searching. So it's kind of already comparable to what lurks beyond with a 3-drop, but then beyond that, you're gaining an extra mana every time. And additionally, doubling ETBs is like what can also compound the amount of mana you're getting. Especially since this card doesn't exile itself. So if you get a card that can let you recast the beckon, you can sacrifice the creature, let you recast the beckon, and kind of do like a chain down in a sense.
Yep.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, card's just really good.
Can't wait to use this on a 5-drop and then get 2 Infectious Egos.
That's one of the most tame things you can do with this card, honestly. I gotta say, you can do much more ridiculous things with this.
Fair.
I'm pretty sure there's actually kill if you do this on a 5-drop. I can't remember what it was, but
I would not be shocked.
I think Purple talked about that. Yeah. Anyway, so I think this card is kind of a nuts card in general, but I also think one of the main things that made it really powerful is the consistency it brought to that shell. Purple Murasaki talked about how it was actually like what lurks beyond was the most powerful thing in that deck, and Beck and Pack was like copies 5 through 8. So I don't know. I think this card is
which is like interesting because of like how they're reversed essentially.
Yeah.
I think Beck in the Bag is way more powerful than what lurks beyond, honestly, to like an almost unreasonable degree. Like, I don't know. I just think the extra copy is worth way more than going up. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't personally disagree with you.
Yeah. And it's part of why I was kind of like when Pip was like, "Oh, should we get rid of Fate Stitcher?" I was like, "Well, what if we get rid of Fate Stitcher and this card is just the problem anyway?" You know?
Yeah, it turns out.
Like, I don't know, but I mean, no one's played this deck since then, so we don't really know.
Yeah, and it feels like a card that like
scary.
Yeah,
and
it feels like a card that if it is the problem, there are like several easy knobs to tweak to change that. So
yeah, so next
and
up
in the meantime, like we were mentioning earlier, toolbox decks are hype. So
yeah, I mean, I think this deck is cool and should exist. The Fate Stitcher interaction is probably unsavory though.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so the next card we have is another very Hersey-esque design. It's Breach the Lilies. It's a 2-mana green instant. Cast target non-land card with mana value 2 or less from your graveyard without paying its mana cost, and then you exile Breach the Lilies. So this card's basically Cane Dancer, but with a couple things, it can hit anything, and you don't get the creature. And I think Hersey has played this card in one of their Hersey.deck piles, basically just to kind of free themselves to run fewer cards that need, or like to run a lower density of Cane Dancer targets, basically. And that's also, pretty much the only time you'd use it, I think.
It can also recast Cane Dancer, excitingly.
Yeah, I mean, if you just want more Cane Dancer effects, you can just run this in your Cane Dancer deck and Cane Dancer your Cane Dancer.
One thing that was brought up in terms of like what makes this good / what makes this worth investigating, etc., is the fact that Cane Dancer puts a lot of pressure in you indexing very heavily on blue instants at 2 mana. Like, technically works with sorceries, but most of the time Cane Dancer decks don't want that.
This lets you run more 1-drops? Is that what you're saying?
This lets you run more 1-drops, and it lets you be less reliant on blue mana. So
the other thing is that Cane Dancer oftentimes is like, we can't print this card, or some of those people are like, we can't print this card because then instant speed discard, or yada yada yada, and this will let you do that. I think
that's also
people are often too obsessed with like avoiding those kind of things, because like when it happens, like okay, whatever, but it's not like it's not the kind of thing worth like totally warping things around, I think. But
yeah, very briefly, DOA had an instant speed discard spell, which was like it was a 2-mana instant speed duress or something.
Yeah.
That I just like had in there for the limited and completely forgot about constructed applications. And
I
that was
submitted an instant speed discard spell for MSC, and it got like 5 votes, I think.
okay. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's just like in general, I think it's generally fine because also the ninjas deck is already doing that.
Yeah, like people are already locking you out of your draw step. Like, who cares?
It's just something that's like
Yeah.
a baseline level of annoying that most people don't like.
Yeah,
but
I think
I
it's
agree
sort of
generally.
like difficult to distinguish
think
like what are
people-
good design principles in general and what are good design principles for specific environment or specific context, because it's like even in I feel like even in like maybe this is a hot take, but I feel like even in standard I think it would be fine to like have instant speed discard, but it's not something that you want to be showing up so often that it's an experience that players keep having. But
Yeah,
then in a place where like MSEM, where you're expecting enfranchised and experienced players to be the main participants, I think that it's not like a play experience that's as like universally bad for that group, so you can be like a little bit more whatever with it. I don't know if that made sense.
That's a good take on it. I agree with you. All right. What is our last green card again? Oh yeah. Yeah, this card's kind of good. It's World Mana New. It is a green sorcery for 1 mana. As an additional cost to cast the spell, sacrifice a land. You may put a land card you own from outside the game onto the battlefield. So you are basically, it's crop rotation, but it's not an instant, and the land comes from your sideboard, which can be a drawback or a benefit depending on how you want to look at it.
I think it's basically never a drawback to use your sideboard like this when it's like this level. Like I think
it didn't just see a deck using this card like 5-0 League to like be like 4 extra copies of the namesake land. I forget the name of the card.
Jade Temple.
Yeah, so that's pretty cool.
Yeah, I think this card is one of those things that we keep printing really powerful land tutors, and I think we're at the point where we can't actually print any lands that win the game on their own. Which, like, I don't think anyone was in the business of printing Dark Depths anytime soon. But
we have Hidden Garden Entrance.
That's true. I guess that's kind of on its own.
This Monument of Queens, kind of.
I mean, I'm thinking more like instantaneously, not like is a threat.
Yeah, I mean, I don't. I don't think Dark Depths are gonna survive very long, even if we do print one. So.
Yeah. But I think this card's very powerful, but it's also the sort of powerful that is like subtle and not always useful. In general, there's a lot of wishes and tutors where it's like, well, you've printed an incredibly powerful version of this effect, but there's not actually a lot of things worth tutoring with it.
Yeah, I think with this card, I'd be much more inclined to be like, there's a land that I really want to have access to as much as possible, like the Jade Temple example, and it doesn't really feel as good to me to use this as a toolbox card, because then it's like, well, you're just doing crop rotation but worse,
Yeah,
like I feel like in most decks, this might be weird, but I feel like with Heart and being like one of the more relevant lands, it feels like the fair use case of this, usually you just want to play Epic Encounter, while like if you're, again, the Jade Temple deck is like the first deck where I was like, oh yeah, okay, this is actually
like, maybe Wonderfall would have played this.
That's also true. Yeah, that's fair.
Because it's a free landfall trigger, and it gives you, it doesn't cost you net mana, and it also lets you tutor for a bunch of, like, it can be an extra fetch, it can be an extra whatever, like.
Yeah, for sure. Can you imagine just like not having to play Blood River's main? True.
Well, you would still play Blood River main because you can fetch it, but having a Blood River sideboard, or just I think not having to play cards like Whiterun Gates main would be really nice, because I often was like, I would love just like a random Whiterun Gates in here, but also sucks most of the time. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So like, this would have been actually really good and wonderful. Okay, next up we have. Should we move into multicolored?
Yep.
Yeah.
And this is the last section of cards we have.
Yeah. Well, we have an artifact and we have one artifact and one enchantment. Sorry.
Yeah, those are in sections, so they don't count. They're They're lonely. So first up, we have Bind the Mind. White and a blue for an enchantment. When it enters the battlefield, each poisoned opponent reveals their hand. Then you choose an online card name. Spells with the chosen name can't be cast. The poisoned opponent part, pretty usually not relevant. The being able to just come down and lock your opponent out of playing a spell, very good. Just in general, like this is sort of like, yeah,
There's a card called Nevermore in Canon, which costs 3. I think if you take that card and make it cost 2, it's actually a really noticeable improvement.
pretty
So,
much.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there's a little card called Meddling Mage that a couple people might know from its various appearances in basically every single format ever. I actually genuinely can't tell whether taking the body away is a benefit or an issue with Meddling Mage, because that 2/2 body is so easily killed with every single anti-hate bear piece people bring in, whereas Bind the Mind, you need specifically artifact enchantment removal.
I would say it makes it better as a sideboard card and worse as a main deck card.
I agree, because it's not a threat on its own.
Yeah.
As someone who has been playing Infuse in a meta that has this card, I've definitely been a little bit nervous anytime my opponent could sideboard it in, because it's like, well, if they do sideboard it in and I didn't bring in Nature's Claim, I'm screwed. But if I do bring in Nature's Claim and they're not on this, then I look like an idiot.
I think it's also worth bringing up that this set actually does have a couple of good ways, like to incidentally give your opponent poison counters. Like there's the discard spell, and there's ego. So like sometimes you might get to peek at their hand first too, which is nice.
Which makes this quite better.
Yeah. All right.
Oh yeah. Also, there's an amazing secret layer of this card, which has Blank Space by Taylor Swift. So this has quickly become my favorite card in the format. Thanks.
Sweet.
Okay, next up we have another similar sort of hand hate style card. Bearer of Tormented Truths, blue and a black. When it enters the battlefield, you get to look at target player's hand, exile a non-land card from them. They get to draw a card. Okay, sure. It does like a Tidehall's Color type thing, except they never get back the card and they have to swap it out for something else. But they maintain card parity. Okay. Nope, actually you get card advantage, because as long as you have Bearer of Tormented Truths, you can cast that card and you get free fixing.
Yeah, this card's pretty obnoxious. The fact it does give them a card back means that you don't want it in the same way that you want, like, Gyrian Pickpocket or whatever ninja's currently on to empty people's hands. But
this card is terrible in ninjas, because you need to actually cast the card to get value. And ninjas doesn't go above like 2 or 3 mana.
But it's a really powerful effect in other blue-black tempo style strategies. And I think just the fact that they can't get the card back, like,
I don't think this is a tempo card.
They can't. I mean, I guess it's a 1/1.
This feels like a mid-range card to me.
This is a very good mid-range card.
Especially if you're like able to blink or recur it. That's what I like.
It feels like it feels like if we had like Wet Dawson mid-range, I could see this in there.
The place where this has seen play so far is in a oh, actually it's seeing oh no, never mind. Sorry, the thing I was going to say is the place where it saw play before was in 4-color Minister as 4 copies. The Dream Sight build, I think it is. No, that's just a normal 60-card deck. And it also saw play in a couple other like weird brew, like 5-color gold cards, Endless Helpless Souls, Parapools nonsense.
Remember when that deck was like the only way people were playing EHS, and everyone was like, EHS isn't very good, guys.
Good times.
People were saying that EHS wasn't good?
Yeah. I mean, I had the impression that EHS wasn't good, because that deck was not very good.
Which deck was this again?
It was basically just people played Parrot Pools, EHS, and a pile of...
Right, okay, yeah. Okay.
Yeah. That deck was hot garbage. Mostly because if you didn't draw any of the like namesake cards, it was kind of just a pile of bad cards.
I just always assumed that like I never heard anyone saying that EHS was a bad card. I think I just missed that.
My take in the a New Horizons was that you do actually need to kind of warp your deck around EHS, and it isn't a free roll by any means, but that it is an extraordinarily powerful effect if your deck is built around it. So
which scans
Kafka syndrome. Still have never seen anyone coalesce it, but
wait, I built a deck based around coalescing it though.
Oh right, sorry, 9 ramp. Never mind. I remember that.
Yeah.
Okay.
The next card that we have is Needless Atrocities. So blue-black, choose a creature card name. Each player sacrifices a creature, then each player who controls a creature with the chosen name gets a poison counter. Draw a card.
Okay, so that's flavor text. This is Exant the cantrips.
Yep. The other secondary thing to note about this card is it's blue, so you can cane dance it. Obviously, it's less good when you cane dance it because you sacrifice the cane dancer. But that's still like semi-relevant, just because our options in terms of blue 2-mana hard removal aren't actually that good. Like we have
press the
weak, and that's the only like real option. So
I still think like Edict Someone Draw a Card is quite good.
I agree. Sorcery kind of hurts, and also, as we've talked about before, turns out that there's a lot of good competition in this slot.
Yep.
But I still think it's like a eminently playable card.
Yep. All right. Well, we just talked about this. I feel like we don't need to spend too much time on this card because we've talked about it.
Yeah, we talked about it in the New Horizons review.
I think a lot of play and
yeah.
I think we can just say like, hey, this is a card that's been in the format for a while because of this was also New Horizons, right? It wasn't MSE.
Yep.
New Horizons, yeah.
Yeah, and it's been a solid build around that has been in several aggressively oriented decks. That
I want to say I wouldn't be shocked if this card eventually gets nerfed.
Yeah,
I think it can feel kind of homogenizing in a way where like it's so powerful that as we get more tools that you can play in decks that use it, it kind of becomes at the point where it's like, well, you can't play cards that don't work with it, you know, or you're encouraged not to play cards that don't work with it. So that's kind of like my take on it, especially since I still think people need to build more decks that actually can coalesce the card, because like it's not that hard to do, and coalescing it is actually just ridiculous because it's great stats and a free 2 extra cards.
Yeah, and the fact it has both flying and vigilance is kind of nuts.
Yeah.
I think you're right. Like I feel like lots of people, like I think you can compare it to 10 to the Grove in certain shells.
Oh yeah, I mean I played the Night Ramp deck I built was running this as basically like copies 5 through 8 of 10 to the Grove.
Yeah, I think there's definitely
so like you can cast 2 ramp spells with this, or you cast a ramp spell and a removal spell, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
All right. Next up we have More No More. It's a green and white sorcery. You get to return a permanent card with mana value 2 or less from your graveyard to battlefield, and it's got Acquiesce. People were mostly saying this card is good with fetches, right?
Yeah, and shifting lands, obviously.
Yeah, so you go like 1-drop on turn 1 into this. Is that the idea?
It also saw play in the EHS Parapools deck I was describing earlier, because it can pick back up Parapools.
Yeah, sure.
It's multicolored. Yeah. I think in general, like this card is like, it definitely looks weird in the shadow of EHS, where like, oh well, you know, it's my 2-mana 2-for-1 that like requires I play small things. But I think the fact that it has the kind of fail case as restore is nice. But
so this is a really nice build around, actually. Essentially really powerful too. Like you can actually double ramp on turn 2 with this if you play a 1-drop and a fetch. So
yeah,
definitely like a lot of high roll potential.
Okay. Next up we have the next up is a bit of a pipsqueak pick. I don't think this card is like actually that good. Well, okay, everything in my head tells me this card is nuts, but I really don't think reality has proven that to be the case yet. So the next card that we have is Ravik, Still Smoke Seer. Jund colors for a 3/3 human shaman, legendary creature, blah blah blah. Tap X, untap shamans you control. She deals X damage to any target, and you gain X life. I just think that this is a very powerful ping effect, being able to potentially split up damage, gaining the life, being able to tap Polyp Pools for it, although Polyp Pools in your, I want to cast a 3-color 3-drop on curve deck is kind of suspect.
I actually think you're kind of right, because Cunning Spark Mage is like still not that embarrassing in your toolbox. And this has actually respectable stats and gains you life. So like you can just attack, you know, and block, and we'll, you know, trade with stuff. So that's cool. obviously the Jund color requirement is going to be more restrictive in what decks can play it. But I think you're right that this is actually potentially worth like looking out for what other shamans you can like stick into this deck and try to just dominate the board, you know? That's pretty cool.
Yeah, we have several shaman mana dorks, including Endurance Scryers.
Interesting.
So you can turn 2 this off that.
Yeah.
Bloodbraid Ritualist, which is a solid card. Chi Li, which is like kind of nuts card, but you basically
Oh,
you
Yeah,
do not
Chili is
want
a
to be.
shaman? Oh.
Yeah, you also don't want to be tapping Chi Li to this if you can avoid it. Dovin as another shaman mana dork. Infectious Ego, but again, don't want to be tapping Infectious Ego to this if you can avoid it.
I'm just trying to see a pattern here.
Yeah, we have like actually a fairly strong shaman.
We are getting a set with some shaman tribal synergies.
That's also true.
So we've also talked about this next card, which is End of All Things. I think
essentially the card that makes me
how
ask, why would you print Pull Away in the set and then print this as well?
I mean,
this card is honestly played very well, right? Like,
yeah,
it's been good, but I don't think anyone's complained about it, right?
Oh no. I'm sad that like I feel like Pull Away has not been as relevant because of End of All Things. That's all I'm saying. End of All Things is a great design, and I love it.
Pip said Hersey played it because of the mana cost requirements.
Yeah.
And like not being like just being able to play it in like, I don't know, blue white or red white or black white or whatever. Yeah. It's nice.
But yeah, this one obviously the ability to counter activated or triggered abilities plus having that insane coalesce, like insane ability to coalesce it, definitely puts this over the top.
Yeah. All right. So next up we have what? Perception Pool, I think is our artifact.
Yeah.
Is this another?
Yeah. Honestly, I really missed when we first were going over the set. I don't think I noticed that this card said each main phase until after the set was released when someone pointed it out. But it's like this is actually going to generate you so much mana if you have ways to take advantage of it every time, because let's say I just have an activated ability that costs 5 mana, like just generically, right? I'm essentially getting that ability twice every turn for free without me having to do anything. But on top of that, like you can play this in on your main phase 1 and then go to main phase 2 and immediately hit 5 mana and play something that costs 5, right? And if your opponent doesn't have anything with flash, then they're not actually getting any value out of that. So it's basically up to you to break the symmetry by running things that you can do with that mana and at instant speed if possible, if that makes any sense.
End of All Things is a pretty good thing to do with that mana. In general, the instant speed coalesce cards are like kind of nuts with this.
Well, just countering counter spells, like just counter the stuff that they play with the mana they generate is pretty good.
It doesn't play nice with taxing counters, which most of the most powerful counters in the format are right now. But you could
wait. Is this the card that makes whatever it takes good? Oh
my god, I would. That scans. That sounds awesome. The fact you can't normal cast whatever it takes off it, a little bit awkward, but
this is the card that makes whatever it takes one bad night all those cards good, right?
Well, I should poke Hersey to brew a version of Thunder Roads that uses this.
At the very least, one bad night seems good.
I love mind controls that you can play on your opponent's turn. That's fun gameplay.
Yeah.
The main risk with this card is there's a lot of decks where giving them this mana isn't actually relevant. Like Burn, you're giving them 1 red mana a turn and a bunch of generic mana they can't use. But if you play, there's some matchups where playing this will just kill you.
Well, this card's not good against Burn. If you play this against
sure, it's like a 4-drop, but still.
Yeah, that's why I feel like counter magic is important, because you need to be able to like use your mana to potentially like stop your opponent from killing you.
Right.
Yeah.
And it needs to be a counter spell that isn't a taxing counter and only has a single blue density, which is a little bit rough.
Like a multicolored counter spell, I guess.
Yeah. There's
Destructive Ambition. Crystal Wave.
Crystal Wave with this feels great, actually. That's a really good show. Yeah. I don't know. I think this card is one of those cards that people are going to occasionally brew decks where I see it and I think, well, this card shouldn't be legal. This card's broken. And I think there's going to be a lot of cases where if someone plays this and they haven't really thought out exactly how their deck works, they just hand the game to their opponent because, like,
when when someone pointed out this says each main phase, my eyes definitely bulged out a bit because I was like, oh, I did not notice that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I thought it was like each player's first main phase, but the fact that you get mana right away after playing this is like really huge.
A huge deal. Yeah.
All right. I think the last card we had to talk about was like a pre.
Yeah, I put on the
version of
list.
it, right?
It's Fields of Worship. This used to have Gestalt, and for a number of reasons.
There was a lot of ink spilled about the Gestalt version of this card. Let's just say.
Yeah. Now it's a much more boring but much more safe design.
Basically, very briefly, the reason why this card with Gestalt people didn't like it, myself included, was because you can just hide your creatures' abilities away under a land, and then if they don't have a way to kill the land, it's like they can't actually get rid of those abilities. And you can actually turn the land into a creature whenever you want by playing another creature.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of just like Hersey intended it to be like this weird little way to like generate mana, but the actual use would be like hiding all your degen combo stuff and like, you know, trying to interact with your opponent as little as possible, stuff like that. So
it also gives them haste functionally.
Gives them haste. It lets you create like horseshoe crab combos where you put all your stuff on the same permanent. And, like, it's just.
It also, if we
scary.
still had Devoted Druid, that would be yet another thing that combo with Devoted Druid, which is one of the reasons we don't have Devoted Druid anymore.
It was just one of those things which is like, it was I get the idea behind it, where it's like the entire set is doing lots of weird stuff, and this is like, why not just give this mechanic, which ostensibly is meant for creatures, to another permanent type? And a land is probably, a land, like, this is innocuous, right? Like, it doesn't do anything much otherwise. But then But then it's just like, it's one of those things where like you just throw it in the file and then you think about it later when people are talking about it. You're like, oh, never mind.
I think the Gestalt version of this card would be amazing for like powered cube.
True. Yeah, you can do some.
I think there's so many, like, there's just so much room for creativity there. But for constructed with a large format like this, like, I think it's probably not safe. Anyway, we probably just brought that up because it's kind of a cool shout, because it definitely was, I think, the most discussed card in the set prior to release.
Yep.
I think that's true.
Or at least up there,
Okay, and I think that's the set.
Sweet.
Yeah, I'm in the weird spot of not having much to say other than I can't wait to play with some of these cards once I get back into properly participating in the format. But it was also a lot of fun to contrast my impressions of some of these cards with the actual play patterns / interesting things they've been doing in the format.
I think it's been nice to do a review of a set like after it's been around for a little bit, because we have a little more room to work with when we're talking about new cards. That's cool.
Yeah, I think it would be interesting at some point to do more like flashback reviews, because the old like story time and like maybe Arrow is not as relevant, but like the old story time review was like 3 years ago at this point, I think. So
well, we did do some ones of like old sets, obviously. Hilariously, the Way one is probably now incredibly outdated.
Oh yeah.
So was the Discoveries of Akiva one, right?
Yeah.
That one was rework.
Did we do a DOA one? I think that was one of the ones we didn't do.
Okay, never mind. That's nice. So now you can go back and do a DOA one.
True. But speaking of which one we're going to do next, we're actually going to be covering one of the wildcard sets, Over the Horizon. And I think this is going to be... I'm expecting this to be another two-part one. I feel like we're going to have a lot to talk about here.
That's going to be a really fun one to do, actually. Because I feel like I'm going to want to talk about like a lot of the references.
Yeah, I think we might make it, because usually we're talking about like constructed viability and stuff. I think we might loosen it a little bit.
I would love to do that. Yeah.
Yeah, not so much because there are already a lot of cards we're going to want to talk about for constructed viability.
Yeah,
but but like to the extent of our abilities, we're gonna like
Yeah.
try and fit that in as well because the set itself is just such a celebration of the custom community. So, but yeah, do you guys have anything else you want to say about BYK?
Uh, I think that this set really embodies Hersey as a designer. Um, Sometimes that's good, sometimes it's bad. Most times it's good. I, hopefully that's not seen as offensive. I mean, I think this set has a lot of really uniquely cool things that only Hersey can do, really, or like not only Hersey can do, but only Hersey does.
And
Um,
it's really interesting, just like
yeah,
because I feel like custom design is one of those things where like it's sometimes hard for people to see how you can express yourself and how you can leave
yeah,
your mark. And it's
hmm
always really cool when you can see something like, oh yeah, that's a Hersey design, just because
yeah.
like
I really love designs that bring out a designer's personality, um, or like projects or sets that do that. So,
also like I
um,
think aesthetically
yeah,
there's definitely like this lots of like not abstract, but I think there's like Hersey loves to have like I feel like a lot less literal art as to like what the flavor is going on, and so I
yeah.
think this set really like ramps that up because of
I think
and it can because of the thematic slash narrative thing that's going on.
I do want to say in terms of narrative, I feel like I'm kind of left lacking in that department a little bit. Like I don't feel like there's like a really big narrative through line that you get just from looking at the cards, which is something that I wish I would have seen more of. Because I think the world seems interesting, but we don't really learn much about it besides that it's weird and there are weird creatures and
Yeah, there's like
there are a
some
couple
stuff,
characters
but I did
mentioned.
have
But
to DM Hersey, and then Hersey sent me um, a many paragraph thing.
if you have lore, it's great. I just
I think like
personally
the
I
thing is
wish that
like
it was more like apparent on the cards, I guess.
yeah, I think the
Um,
interesting thing is it's one of those things where like once you know about it, you can see where it is on the cards. I just think that it's like the cards don't lend themselves to help you find that through line or help you understand which parts are important and which parts are sort of just like
it's
window
funny
dressing.
because sometimes that's actually the case in canon magic too. Like they've gotten better at that, but like there have been sets where it's like, what story? Like,
And I mean,
you know
yeah,
what I mean?
it's hard to do
Yeah,
narrative in something that's like so decentralized as
yeah,
Magic, Magic
yeah.
set. But
Uh,
yeah, okay, we're getting off topic a little bit, but
okay, yeah.
yeah,
Overall, I like Beyond Ken. I think that it's weird, but in a good way. Uh, and yeah, good job, Hersey. It's been cool having it around.
hmm yeah, and also sorry, Hersey, the I meant to do this one right after Alcaba, but then a bunch of stuff happened. But we got there eventually, you know, better late than never and all that.
Hell yeah.
But yeah, so thanks everyone who listened to this, and we'll see you next week for Over the Horizon. Until then, this is gonna be Caillou, Pipsqueak, and Dodger signing off. See y'all.